This SoonerScoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. Don't miss a moment on or off the field. Make every day a highlight with LASIK at Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where SoonerScoop LASIKs.
Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosovich, George Stoy here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. A Friday, August 22nd. And we're almost there. Game week in Norman just around the corner. Another week of around the corner here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel, taking all your questions from the Crimson Quarter and bringing them here to this space, this platform on the YouTubes. George, how are we? Good Friday to you, sir.
Good. I am doing great. Ready for some actual college football to start tomorrow.
Week 0 do anything for you?
It does for me. I mean, it is a little personal for me.
Sure.
My cousin is the offensive line coach for Kansas State,
Hell
so
yeah.
I will definitely be tuned into that. But I was just telling you, I'm going to be watching Hawaii, Stanford,
Yeah, absolutely.
Kansas, Fresno State.
Yeah.
Like I'll be tuned into all those.
Be interesting to see what happens with Kansas this year. I do like the stadium renovations that they did. A
Look
little
awesome.
bit sad that we're not going to be going up to the booth
Yeah.
anytime, I guess, for the foreseeable future. All right, let's get into it. Obviously, Oklahoma, from a practice standpoint, they have something of a walkthrough on Friday, and then they're going to head into game week. Obviously, probably have Saturday off, Sunday off, and then reallocate themselves to get ready for Illinois State coming to town next Saturday. Can't believe that's already here. Feels like that.
Wait.
Hasn't it felt like the preseason's taken forever?
The longest ever.
I think that's because of the anticipation and everything that comes with the season. So we have a ton of questions from the Crimson Corner today that we're going to get into. And good luck to Kansas State this weekend. We want
Let's go Wildcats.
I guess, yeah, sure.
Go Cats.
Sure, why not? Well, I was going to say bet, but we don't do that here on this program. All right, before we get to the questions from the Crimson Corner, let us tell you about our good friends over at HomefieldApparel.com. We've been telling you about them for a while now. Got the Platinum Football box there in the top left corner of your screen. Got the cursor right over it. Plenty of officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. That's what Homefield Apparel does. Premium collegiate apparel brand based out of Indianapolis. Had the coaches' jackets, the bomber jackets from a year ago. I know that the Radosovich family, the Stoya family, is well outfitted with everything from HomefieldApparel.com.
Yeah, I know my wife, Erin, she's going to be rocking Homefield Apparel at some of the games this year.
Very good. And get that Platinum box. I know that it's first come, first serve. There might be a couple still left for the Oklahoma fan, and certainly all you got to do is go to HomefieldApparel.com. We love Homefield Apparel here. All right, let's get to the questions. A lot to get into. And, the first question, I guess, we'll just kind of start with the most recent current events here. The SEC, they announced on Thursday afternoon that Oklahoma is going to be going to, or that the conference just as a whole is going to be going to the 9-game conference schedule. Deal the trill with the new SEC announcement. Who do you see being our 3 quote-unquote rivals in the new format? And I think there's 2 that are fairly, I don't want to say slotted in already, but I think you can write them down maybe in pencil. Texas and Missouri. I think that those 2 are there. Then it kind of becomes a little bit of a question mark, George. I know that Florida's been mentioned by a couple people, just kind of projecting everything. Greg Sankey, when he was on with Paul Feinbaum on Thursday, didn't really come out and say like when they're looking to announce this, but you have Florida out there. I know that LSU's been tossed around. I think here locally, there's a lot of people that want to see Arkansas on that schedule. What's your thoughts?
I think it's going to be LSU. Like you said, I think Texas and Missouri are for sure. I mean, obviously Texas 100% is going to be every single year. That's not going away. But I think Missouri is going to be in there just because of the geography as well as just their history together. As much as OU fans maybe don't like that. And then I think it's going to be LSU. And the only reason I say that is because of the way that they scheduled it already, where it's this Thanksgiving weekend type game. It feels like the conference is trying to maybe make that some sort of a rivalry. I know a couple years ago, a lot of people thought it'd be Florida, so maybe Florida's in the mix. I would personally love Arkansas. I think that would be great. It's not far at Fayetteville. Everybody loves Fayetteville. I think you could have a little bit of a rivalry there. I think they're going to end up with Texas. I think Texas is going to get OU, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. So we'll see how it plays out. I do think it'll be during the season that we'll find out the 3 opponents, and then it's December we'll find out the full schedule for Oklahoma for next year.
You could kind of see that coming together. I know that just talking to the folks down in Baton Rouge, going on a couple of radio shows, Matt Moscana, those good guys down there, they've kind of pushed it from day one. When the original, the first year, last year's schedule was announced, they kind of asked me, like, Would you mind having that as the Thanksgiving?
I don't even. Who's
weekend
LSU's
game?
like number one rival?
I would say Arkansas. They play
Is it
for
Arkansas?
the boot, right?
Yeah. Arkansas, Alabama, I know has been kind of a rivalry between those two, but that's mostly because they've both been good.
It's hard to get through when you start like separating all the schedules and you're like, okay, well, they have to be here. You have to preserve the Florida-Georgia game, those types of stuff. So we'll see. It'll be something to certainly follow here throughout the year. And as you said, maybe we'll get a little bit more news on that.
Yeah.
I can't remember. When did they announce the conference schedule last year?
It's December.
December?
Yeah, usually it's around December.
Okay. Yeah. It'll be on SEC Network, I'm sure. They'll make it into like a 3-day
it'll be
rollout and everything.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it'll be good. All right, let's get into some of the team stuff. There is a season upon us, and let's start here from Sooner Shaka. This is kind of a fun one. Who's not getting talked about in camp that will be a big contributor? And it's kind of weird because, over this last month,
I feel like we've talked
and a
about
half,
everybody.
It feels like it, but I still think that like somebody like a Peyton Bowen probably doesn't get talked enough about. And it's somebody that, we were talking about 2.5 weeks ago, hadn't really heard a whole lot. And then all of a sudden he had a really good kind of close to camp.
Yeah, maybe an Owen Heineke.
Sure.
That's somebody we didn't talk about at all until previous show. It sounds like he might get some playing time. I feel like we haven't talked at all about PJ. I still feel like he's going to get on the field in some capacity this year. On offense, I think it's a little bit more difficult because we have run through a ton of guys. Like at receiver, it's like we've talked about 8, 9, 10 guys at receiver at times.
And it's probably a little, I don't know, out of mind to think that you're going to have 10 guys that you're going to be able to rely on. Let me throw a name at you. What about Cade McIntyre at tight end?
Yeah, I've only heard his name like one time. And it was like he made like a great catch in practice one day, and it's like, okay, does that mean that he's going to play a lot? I don't think so.
Let me throw this one at you. Not a new name by any means. Javonte Barnes.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to play a lot. He's going to play a ton.
But I think that there's been so much attention placed on, Torrey Blaylock and then obviously Jade Knott coming in from Cal. He's kind of been maybe forgotten about a little bit. I know that we talked about Xavier Robinson when he came back to practice. Had a really good week. I think that was about a week and a half ago. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
What about somebody like Luke Baklenko?
Sure.
I mean, he's somebody that we haven't
talked about at all.
Yeah, on the offensive line. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets some playing time, at least early in the season. Again, he's not going to start or anything. I don't even know if he's with the twos, but with some of the health issues they've had at tackle, maybe he gets some playing time.
No doubt about it. All right, we will continue on. We'll go to the injured list here. MG Sooner, is Jaden Gibson still on the team? Yes. But
I just wouldn't have high expectations on him being a big time contributor this year. I hope I'm wrong. We really
what
haven't.
A surprise that would be if he was able to contribute at some point.
It's just one of those things where we haven't heard really much at all about him. He's been at practice though. He's been out there not practicing, but he's suited up like the injured guys are and just kind of on the sidelines. I don't even know like what his timeline is.
Sure.
I just really think at this point, you kind of have to look at other guys in terms of who's going to be real contributors for this group.
Best, quality or characteristic, availability, right? He just simply hasn't been available. That knee injury, we knew at the time at the year at the time when it was bad, and then he had the setback in the spring, and it's just kind of almost recalibrated that clock to get it back onto the field, which sucks. I mean, it does.
He's an awesome guy too. So
absolutely. All right, let's go to special teams. Suitor 76. How many drop punts before Peyton Bowen is replaced? Returned. A lot of positivity from this one. Return game has been awful for a decade or more.
I think Peyton Bowen's going to be starting punt returner.
Okay.
So you can be angry about that. I that's my guess, but I really don't know for sure. I think Isaiah Satania could do it. He did it for Arkansas. I think Torrey Blaylock would like to do it. Jaden Knott, I believe, is going to be the starting kick returner. I don't believe people doing punts, but we'll see. I do think, though, they're going to let Peyton do it again this year.
It'll be interesting.
At least to start. We'll see.
The Marvin Mims thing, he was a great punt returner when they allowed him to be back there, unless you were throwing the game to go to Los Angeles, like Lincoln Riley
correct
did in 2021. Eric Gray back there, and he did fumble. All right, we will continue on. This will be fun. I think on Monday we should get a better idea about a depth chart when the game notes are released. Trav, is that how you pronounce it? 13. How many positions do you think there's an or for starter come first depth chart, starter only?
Okay,
not
starter,
the entire depth chart.
I think running back.
Okay.
Tight end.
Okay.
I'll say wide receiver, at least one of the wide receiver spots. I think
Quarterback?
No. No quarterback. Left tackle, left guard, right tackle.
Uh-huh.
And then on defense, so that's 6. And then on defense,
So
I
6
think,
of the 11 on offense.
I think. That's a guess. Again,
Sure.
Offensive line, give or take 2 or 3. And then on defense, I would say defensive end, 1 defensive end.
The spot opposite
defensive
of our
tackle.
Mason.
I think 1 defensive tackle.
Okay.
I think no one at linebacker, cheetah, corner, and possibly safety. So
Ooh.
11. That would be 11 oars. I would
11
I
of
would
the
say
22.
if I were an odds maker, I would put it like over under 10.5.
10.5. What about kicker? Kerry wants to know about kicker.
Kicker. No, I think it's gonna be Sandell. But at the same time, what's really hard about this is like I think they have their starters, but they like to put the oars on there, especially for guys that have maybe earned. Like for a good example is like a Heath Ozida or Eddie Pierre-Louis.
Sure.
Like both guys had pretty solid camps.
Sure.
I think they're going to roll with Heath being their number 1 guy, but it's like, man, Eddie had a good camp. Like we're still going to put him as an
And if you
oar.
ask the position group or the position coach, he'd probably
Right.
say the other guy that doesn't start, well, he's a starter as well. You know what I mean?
And running back's another one. Like a lot of people might be like, running back, Jaden Knott's number 1. Jaden Knott missed 2 weeks of practice.
Sure.
Torrey Blaylock and Javonte Barnes were great during camp. And they you have to remember the depth chart isn't just I already said tight end, Kerry. The running back is like it's the depth chart isn't just about like who actually is starting. It's kind of like a reward.
Yeah, for
in a lot of ways.
A really good summer, a really good
like Torrey
preseason.
Blaylock may by the end of the year not be getting as many snaps as like Xavier Robinson.
Sure.
Right. Which I have no idea. Torrey's been great, but he practiced. He was great. And he deserves to be on the depth chart. So don't be surprised if it's Jaden Knott or Javonte Barnes or Torrey Blaylock, all listed as first string.
I usually roll my eyes at the depth chart until
Yeah,
we
it's
come in
stupid.
here, and then we break it all down and we act like it's a big deal
Yeah, it's
until for the 4 days or whatever that go throughout
Yeah.
next week, and then you kind of get into the delves of the season. That thing doesn't change too much.
No.
All right, we will continue on. This is a interesting question from Sooner714. George and Eddie, tell me both your most bullish case for the season. Remove all PTSD from last season. Tell me a scenario that you think is possible, even if it's a slight chance, even though you guys are the duo of doom. I don't know about that. I still believe there's some wild hopium fantasies deep down there. George isn't allowed to say 9-3. If he does, fire him.
Here's what I'll say. I think that this is the most talented roster that Brent Venables has had in his 4 years. And I think it's the best quarterback he's had in his 4 years at Oklahoma.
Talk to Al Ishbeck about that. He
Yeah.
brought up a good point. How many times do you go into a game in 2024 with the better quarterback?
Yeah, and that to me is the side of this team can go. Honestly, I think the ceiling, like they could go 10-2. They could get to the playoff. They could be in the hunt for making an appearance in the SEC title game, potentially, just because I think the SEC could beat itself up, right? Like that to me is the side of, okay, like there is some real hope because I do think they've done a good job of retaining their players. I think they went out and got some talented guys. They returned experience on the offensive line. They also added talent on the offensive line. And the number one thing for me is I really do believe John Mateer is the best quarterback Brent has had. And that's no slight at Dylan Gabriel, who I think was really good. But I think Mateer's upside is even greater than Gabriel's. And that to me is like they're going to have a chance in every single game to win.
Sure.
I don't know if that was the case last year sometimes. This year, I think it is the case. They're going to have a chance. Now it's about can they go do it? Because the one thing, Eddie, and the reason why we're the duo of doom, which I think we're more of like the duo of realism, the last 3 years, they haven't been able to get over that hump very often in those close games, in those big games. And so that's the part that it's like, okay, can they finally get over?
I mean, if this team gets to 10-2, you're talking about
It'd be a fantastic
Brent
year.
Venables probably being one of the finalists for coaches of the year, not just in the SEC, but nationally. You're talking about John Mateer probably most likely being some type of Heisman finalist or semifinalist, either way you want to put it. You're probably talking about, Ben Arbuckle. Winning the assistant coach of the year award. Can't think of the name of it right now. I'm an idiot.
Broyles.
The Broyles Award.
You're talking about winning possibly.
You're talking about one of
multiple games that are in the top 10, like top 10 games.
It'll be.
When's the last time OU's did that?
It would be one of the bigger turnarounds in college football, outside of somebody that threw out a 2-10 last year and all of a sudden became bowl eligible or something like that, like a Kansas turnaround with Lance Leipold. But yeah, I mean, I think that there is like the other side of it too, that you could go 8-4 and 9-3 and be leaps and bounds better than they have been over the first 3 years during Brent's tenure. So that's why everything's so exciting. And I think that we're going to have a question here coming up about when we'll start buying in. We can answer that then. But you get through September, which I've kind of labeled as maybe one of the more important Septembers in the history of Oklahoma football. And then you get into the Cotton Bowl, and who knows what happens in a game like that. Maybe you can build some momentum in that middle portion of the season going into that stretch coming after Texas that starts at South Carolina and is going to be every week is going to be like one of those games of the year type situations. All right, we will continue on. I promise we're not the doom and gloom couple that it's appeared to be. Blake Griffin, 32. Any worry Bill Beatembo and DeMarco Murray will pull some funny business like years prior with their starting lineups in the first 5 games or so? I mean, this is a tough one to answer because, like, what's funny business? I don't think the Bill's going to strive away from what he's done here over the last 13, however many years he's been in Norman. They're going to tinker with some stuff, and I guess in a way, like, who's to blame him?
I just need everybody to prepare themselves for Javonte Barnes to get the first carry of the season.
Interesting.
I think that's going to happen.
Okay.
I think people need to be ready for it.
People are going to lose their minds.
Yes, people are going to lose their minds.
Including me, including you.
I said that, I think it was a couple of years ago. I was like, Marcus Major's going to get the first carry of the season. People are like, you're crazy. Why would they do that? And he did. I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not saying that I know that for sure.
Could you buy into an idea that Javonte Barnes gets the first carry but still doesn't lead the team in rushing yards or attempts against Illinois State?
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe that's a bad example because there's going to be a lot of guys that probably get a lot of carries late in the game.
If I had to guess, Torrey Blaylock will in the first game.
That would probably make sense. Maybe Michigan. What about Michigan?
I think it'll be the Ott show.
Okay.
I think by Michigan, that's why it's like it's hard to say.
Sure.
Offensive line wise, I need everybody to prepare themselves for maybe 4 guys that were also starters last year, all starting again in the first game. The
irony, too, with all the talk that we've had about this offensive line, and it's you mentioned it in the War Room the other night, it could end up being the same 5 in a way that you saw at the end of last season and how
Jacob
bad they
Sexton,
were at the time.
Heath Ozida, Troy Everett, Fabechi Wiwu, Logan Hallen. Like, don't be surprised if that's the first group. I don't know. I honestly... You could give me 5 different combinations on the offensive line, and I'd be like, yeah, that would make sense.
Would that have been different before Michael Fasusi's episode on Tuesday?
I don't know. It would have been really interesting.
Sure.
Now I feel like, I even think, I said earlier, I think Baklenko might be in the mix just because they have some guys hurt. Like, I don't know what Derek Simmons' status is. Jacob Sexton, I think, has been limited in practice. Jake Taylor as well. Like, I don't know whose status is what going into week 1.
There's going to be a lot of attention placed on the 29-year-old offense coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, in 2025, bringing along John Mateer, 19 life Sooner, 91, wants to know, with Arbuckle at OC, do you think DeMarco will have less say on which running backs are ultimately on the field from game to game or series to series compared to previous years?
It's an interesting question. I don't really know. I think DeMarco has usually made that call. I think that the way that Arbuckle operates his offense, he's going to have certain sets, certain plays, certain schemes, designs, whatever, where certain guys have to be on the field, right? Like we've talked about putting Ott in the slot or out wide and motioning him in or doing different things with him. Like, they're going to have certain types of plays where he has to be on the field because that's who's been working those type of plays. So I think that some of that will be out of DeMarco's hands. I also think DeMarco, as much as people want to get mad at him for the rotations, and I understand it, like, there's been some weird stuff go on there.
Listen to a couple of Eskridge Lexus post-game shows over the last couple of years.
I don't think DeMarco's had a running back like this in a while.
Sure.
So I think part of what was going on is, one, he had a couple guys in Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes who were never healthy week to week. And then he had a room that was just like, I don't really, not that he didn't know who to put out there, but it was like, who do we trust the most, right? And I think that he would usually roll with that. So I don't think he's had someone as good as Ott. I also think somebody like Blaylock, the way he's played, maybe he could enter some of that mix as well.
No doubt about it. All right, let's. This is a question that always kind of gives me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies because you don't ever want to have to worry about or think about maybe even the third quarterback. But you have John Mateer starting. You have Michael Hawkins obviously going to back him up. Tony guy, any buzz on the third-string quarterback, and who is the third-string quarterback, George?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Whit Neubauer. That's just a hunch. I think that Jet New is obviously a very raw player, true freshman. Whit Neubauer, he was a freshman a year ago, actually played pretty well at Mercer. They wanted to go out and get a quarterback in the portal to be kind of their third string. I believe it's going to be him.
All right, let's move on to QB1, John Mateer. Got a question about Oklahoma's starting quarterback, Storud. I know you all have mentioned Mateer being more of a vocal leader during practice. What are some examples? Just curious what his disposition on the field is really like.
I think it's one of those things where you have to kind of see it to understand it. I wouldn't say he's just out there yelling and screaming. And of course, we don't get to see like the important parts of practice, like team period. We've heard that he's very vocal in those, but just watching him go from drill to drill, he's always either joking or talking to somebody, just those sorts of things. He's never, very quiet. I know he's given hell to Ben Arbuckle sometimes. He's chopping it up with his receivers. Like, I think all of those things are kind of what we've at least seen at practice.
More than anything, I think he's just, to vocal would be one way to put it, but I think that he kind of oozes this confidence that
he's very personable.
Sure. That's the best way to say
Charismatic.
it. Yeah, that's the best way to say it. And I think that the way it's been more so of not as much of what we've seen as what we've heard from the players and the coaches telling us about, he does this on the weekends with the offensive line. Bill Beatenbow talking about coming into the offensive line room and just sitting for a film session. I think it was Marcus Strong. It was somebody last week that was talking about after one of the scrimmages, he basically gave him his testimonial on who he is as a person. You didn't hear that over the last couple of years at the quarterback position, and obviously how important that thing is.
Yeah, I think you just kind of have to see it. You'll see it on game days, I'm sure, but it's something that we've heard a lot about.
He's very outgoing. Is that the way
people
to say
gravitate towards him?
Sure. All right, let's move to Taylor Tatum. A question about the forward number one running back in the country, Dr. Kill patient. With Torrey Blaylock getting so many reps with the ones during camp, what's the outlook for Tatum? It's pretty simple, isn't it? He has to stay healthy. He has to be out on the field.
Yeah, he's got practice. That's why you haven't heard him, and why I think he might end up not being on the depth chart is because he hasn't practiced. So the outlook for him is, he's got to get healthy, and once he gets healthy, he's got to show the coaching staff something in practice that says, hey, I can play, I deserve some snaps. What's going to be really hard is I think the guys ahead of him have already shown that. Sure. And I think on Saturdays they're going to show that, especially a guy like Jaden Ott and some of those guys, they're going to be like, I deserve more carries. So I think he could end up getting lost in that room.
And he's one of those guys that, if he is able to get out onto the field and he's able to get out on, the game field, you got to take advantage of every opportunity. You can't put the football on the ground, all that kind of stuff that goes into it.
Year.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the defensive line. There's a number of emerging names that we can discuss. Oh, wide receiver. All right, let's go to wide receiver. It was DL on the sheet. With Zion Kearney and Elijah Thomas buzz over last week, do you see the wide receiver room having a higher ceiling than you did coming into fall camp?
Well, I think the Elijah Thomas buzz was already pretty high. I don't know if the ceiling's higher. I don't know where the ceiling is. That's the problem. Answering this question is impossible because we have no idea what the ceiling is.
Sure.
You
listen to the Emmett Jones stuff, and we talked about him on Wednesday, and you talked to any of, in the limited time that we've been able to talk to John Mateer, you would think that they have 4 or 5 Biletnikoff, semifinalists. I know that that's not going to be the case, but can they be a really good unit? And can they get open? Can they be outlets for John Mateer in his, what it sounds like and what it seems like is an easy offense, quote unquote, to be able to distribute the ball out?
Yeah, I think that, the biggest thing for them is they've got a coordinator who's going to get them open. I think you're going to see plays this year where guys are running free or they're designed just extremely well, and Mateer's able to put the ball where it needs to be. I don't know if they have a Biletnikoff winner in their room. I think
Will there be an OU wide receiver that finishes? Do they do 3 teams postseason at the end of the year, SEC?
I think so.
Will they have anybody on one of the 3 teams?
Yes. I'm going to say Deion Burks.
Okay.
But I think the better question is, do they have somebody that'll have over 800 yards receiving?
Sure. You wrote about, or we were talking about the 1,500 yard like marker for Oklahoma. I was kind of decently surprised, as good as some of these offenses were and as good as that thing was in 17, 18, 19. 2 1,500 yard receivers in the history of Oklahoma football.
Yeah, even like CeeDee Lamb, he only had 1,300 only. I mean, he was fantastic
Sure, he was
that year in
unbelievable.
2019. I don't think they have 1,000. I don't think they'll have 1,000 yard receiver. And some of that is I think they're going to have 4 or 5, 6 guys that are going to play. And so it'll be, there's only one football.
Sure.
So I do think, though, Burks will be the leading receiver, and I think he'll be somewhere around 800 yards receiving this year.
All right, full disclosure, it was wrote down on the sheet. It was wide receiver next. Let's go to defensive line now here as we move along. Top tier takes. With all the hype around the defensive line this season, who needs to have the biggest season not named R. Mason Thomas within the unit to validate that hype?
That's a tough question. Probably somebody like a Jaden Jackson, I would say, or a David Stone.
Sure.
Just having kind of a monster year, because I think what you're going to get from Grayson Halton. I think he's going to provide some really good pass rushing moments, have somewhere between 3 to 5 sacks. Dominic Williams is going to do what he does. I think he'll have an even better year this year. But if all of a sudden you look up and Jaden Jackson or David Stone's got 4 or 5 sacks this year on the interior, combined with what you're getting from Grayson and Dominic, you're talking about a really, really dominant, front group. And even at the other defensive end, you need a Marvin Jones Jr. to have a few sacks this year, to have a couple forced fumbles. Him or, Taylor Weiner or Danny Okoye. Maybe Danny Okoye is the answer to that question. He comes out of nowhere and is just, an animal on the edge. And we're talking about him at the end of the year. R. Mason's off to the NFL, but hey, you got Danny Okoye coming back who had 7 sacks or something. Something like that I think is what needs to happen.
Perhaps the good news is you just listed off 4 or 5 names.
Yeah, I know. There's so many guys.
That's a good depth situation for Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis. We were sitting here in these seats on Wednesday when we had a special visitor come to the SoonerScoop offices for the Unofficial 40. You could hear that on all your podcasting platforms. Al Ashback. With Al recently joining the pod, what other legendary Oklahoma broadcasters would you like to drop in next? You each get one choice.
Can we pick someone who's dead?
Well, that would be pretty hard, but yeah, go ahead.
I would pick either one, Bob Berry Sr. or Bob Berry Jr.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that'd be great.
That'd be awesome. It would be awesome. I
grew up listening to them.
This time of college athletics and stuff, I could just tell would really get under his skin.
Yeah.
That would be great. John Brooks would be a pretty good one. I know that he's had a legendary broadcast career in the state of Oklahoma. So yeah,
I'm trying to think who else.
We've had Toby come through.
Toby, he's the man. Gosh, I don't know.
Seat's always open for Jim Traver if he wants to come through. Oh yeah,
Walter
Cronkite. Oh, I thought this was just like an Oklahoma thing with Oklahoma connections.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I didn't know that. Well, I had
Walter
no idea that
Walter
Cronkite was the play-by-play guy. Carrie's telling us. Were you alive when all this happened, Carrie? I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. My bad.
I did not know that either.
I had no idea. What years would that have been? This is called on-air producing. Welcome to the world of radio.
Yeah. How about Merv?
Merv would be great.
Merv Johnson. I mean, he's the man. He coached my dad. So
absolutely.
He'd be good.
He would have stories. Like Merv on a podcast would have stories for days.
He was the best on the
Okay, 1937 is what Carrie is telling us, that Walter Cronkite
was
the play-by-play voice. When was radio even invented?
I feel like the YouTube comments are definitely going to be like, how did they not know that?
Hand up. I had no idea. I had no idea that he had any type of connection. Well, and Carrie says he also did the Apollo moon landing. We all know that was done on a sound.
I do love that Carrie can tell us that Walter Cronkite, or who the play-by-play guy was in 1937.
I had no idea,
but couldn't tell us if Peyton Bowen was at practice.
Truly surprising. I had no idea that was to be the case. All right, we will continue on. We will take all the hatred in the YouTube comment sections, because that means that you've been watching for about 15, 20 minutes. So we will continue on. 10 Man 85, a regular on the program. What will it take early in the season for you to believe in this team? Just a Michigan win, or will they need to really put it to them before you're buying in?
I mean, look, if they really put it on Michigan, say they win by 2 or 3 scores, I think I would be a pretty big believer. I still think I want to see him get over the hump in terms of you got to beat Auburn at home still. Like, you can't blow that game. That's still a huge game. But
I would say, like, overall, if you can get undefeated through this September,
if you can get to 5-0,
I'll start believing a little bit more, because as you said on the podcast on Wednesday, there's some games here that Oklahoma going into last season, they might have lost. They might have dropped that Auburn game at home.
Yeah.
They might have lost to Michigan at home in the second game of the year. So, like, that's the big picture. And then the small picture is, like, I think even going back into some of the, and this might be some of the PTSD from a year ago, but you go back to the Tulane game or the Houston game or, any of the games from last year that they kind of struggled through the first early portion of the season. And I think a lot of us just thought, okay, they're going to get through this. It's the first or second game of the year. If you can go out and kind of implement yourself against Illinois State, do it again against, obviously Michigan, and then take it on the road and do it again at Temple, I'll start buying in each week, a little bit more as they get through September. And then obviously you get to October 12th. But yeah, the Michigan game and the Auburn game are both games that if you can win and do it decidedly and you look good about it, you don't have a lot of penalties, you don't have a lot of turnovers, the little things, the fundamental things that this program has seemingly lost over the last 3 years.
Yeah. And I would even say, look, like, they were, was it 6-0 after they beat Texas in 2023, and then they dropped those 2 games. They ended up being 7-0. They beat UCF, and then they dropped 2 in a row. And so it's like, even if Oklahoma were to get to that point, now this schedule's way different than that, there's still going to be a part, I think, of all of us that are like, how are they going to handle this success?
Or guys like an R. Mason Thomas or Dominic Williams or whoever, the guys that we've been talking about for the last month, are they going out on Saturdays? Are they dominating Illinois State?
Yeah.
And are they having their way against Michigan? I think those will be good barometers, which is a little bit scary, but also a little bit exciting knowing that we're going to probably know in about 14, 15 days if this thing's for real. All right, we will continue on. I think this question is for the George Stoya, Evangelino. We know what a championship team looks like using the Thunder as an example. Knowing that, who are the Thunder player equivalents to guys on the OU roster if we too want to win a championship? SGA, the MVP. J-Dub, the guy who makes the leap to star. Dort, the defensive MVP. Chet, the Nets' big thing. Hart, Enforcer. Caruso, fan fave.
Well, I think Mateer is the MVP. J-Dub, guy who makes makes the leap to star, maybe like a Deion Burks, could be a J-Dub. I think
could R. Mason be that guy that goes from
think
like
he's already a star.
Okay.
I think he could be the Dort defensive MVP. Him or Kip Lewis, I would say, is Dort.
Okay. Next big star, is it too
Danny
much?
Okoye,
or maybe like
that's who I would pick.
Elijah Thomas, maybe
Elijah Thomas. He could be thrown into that. Tory Blaylock, possibly. I mean, it depends. Enforcer, that's probably Jaden Jackson.
I was gonna say Kendall Daniels,
kind
of being like the new guy around the block, the guy that's they acquired, if you will.
What about Fasusi?
Sure,
on the offensive line.
Sure,
he could be the enforcer. And then fan favorite.
Carey nominates Kendall Daniels for the J-Dub role.
Yeah, that'd be good. Caruso,
fan fave. I mean,
that's where I would put Kendall Daniels is fan fave. It's like he's the new, because Caruso was traded.
Sure,
came in. He's the new guy. He's going to make a lot of flashy plays. Maybe.
What about a little bit of a different spin on this? Fan fave. Jaron Kanek, if he turns into some type of pass catching option for John
if he
Mateer.
ends up doing he's like a contributor in the offense, I do think he could definitely be the fan favorite.
Absolutely. All right, we got one more. The benchmarks for a title. Kind of crazy to be talking about this, but we will. Sooner Dog 17, if this defense is a top 7-ish group and this offense makes the jump to a top 20-ish caliber group, which would be, I think, Ben Arbuckle probably wins the Broyles Award if that's the case. Why is this team not a national title contender? As Gabe says, it's okay to be excited. Simple bonus question. Expectations are highest since what season? I feel this team should have very, very high expectations.
I think the expectations are the same pretty much every year. Like you're trying to compete at the highest level. I don't think that
whether it's realistic or not.
Yeah. And I just don't think this year is any you think back to the years with Baker and even Kyler and Jalen, like the expectations were higher that year than this year. Like this year, they're ranked 18th.
Yeah.
You know, they're not a top 10 team coming into the season.
But you can, if you want to scroll through the Twitter or you want to scroll through the internet, you can find a Josh Pate or a Ari Wasserman or whomever. I know Todd McShay that have put Oklahoma in that top 12 type team that they've kind of become that sexy pick for a lot of people nationally, which I have found to be very fascinating. I know that we talked about it coming out of the SEC Media Day.
Yeah, and I would say the other question too, kind of going off what you're talking about, is, you know, they're saying, well, if they're top this, top that. Let me just tell you this stat, and I looked this up over the summer for our mailbag question, because people are like, well, if they're top this, then they should definitely make the playoff. Well, last year, Ole Miss and Alabama were top 20 in scoring defense, scoring offense, total defense, or total offense, total defense, all those 4 categories, and neither one of them made the college football playoff. So, and specifically Ole Miss, I think was top 10 in just about all 4 of those categories, or very close top 10. And they missed out. So like,
but it's pretty simple for those teams though. Don't lose to Kentucky at home.
But that's what I'm saying is like this idea of like, well, they just have to be at the end of the year. If they're this, then they're going to be a national title contender. That's not the case, right? Like you still have to go win games. You can have great stats, but you can also still, as we know, find a way to blow a game, right? Missouri is a great example. Like Oklahoma should have won that football game and they blew it, right?
But if you have the top 20 offense, maybe you score more, maybe it's not as close.
But but you still got to be able to like.
No, I see what you're saying.
So like I hate that idea of like, well, they have to be this, and this. Yeah, sure, that gives you a great chance to be a quote unquote national title contender playoff team, but that doesn't mean that you're actually that in real life.
And none of it matters if you miss a game-winning field goal with 10 seconds left, and all of a sudden that's the loss that keeps you out, like a Kentucky going down to Ole Miss and winning, or whatever the hell happened here with Oklahoma and Alabama last year.
Exactly.
So we'll see. It's all going to be here on Monday. And just talking about game week. Speaking of game week, big announcement for SoonerScoop.com. I think everybody saw the announcement that they're going to be allowing tailgating on the Oval, on the North Oval, which is going to be very, very cool. I know that we're going to have a part in that as well. We're going to be recording an unofficial 40 on Saturday, August 30th, on game day, starting at noon over in the North Oval. So we invite everybody to come out. I know there's going to be a lot of people. It's looking like the weather's going to be unbelievable next Saturday. Fingers crossed that it stays.
I'll believe it when I see it.
But this is what it's going to look like over at the North Oval. Everybody, it's just a short walk south from Campus Corner. I know that they've moved a lot of things over to the north side of campus on game days. But drop off, there's a big question. Like, how do we get everything over there? I know it was kind of one of those question marks that was over there during Lindsay Street. You couldn't drop stuff off. They will have Friday drop-off from 6 to 8 p.m. and then again on Saturday morning from 7 a.m. to be determined. We will have a little bit more information on that hopefully by next week, and you can go set everything up. And it's going to be a really cool scene if they can get a number of people over there, George.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And, I'm excited to go over there. I mean, you and I walked over there the other day.
A lot bigger than I was imagining.
It could be an awesome scene if people show up and set up their tailgates over there. And us being over there, I think is going to be a lot of fun. So hoping a lot of fans can come by. I know we're maybe planning to have some special guests on as well. So
maybe some giveaways. I know that these Homefield hats, homefieldapparel.com that you see behind us, I think we're going to be working on something to try to get these to Oklahoma fans, people that are going to want them. So really sharp stuff. Really excited to be a part of that over there at the North Oval coming up on game day this Saturday.
Are you going to be signing autographs over there?
Yeah, if somebody wants an autograph, I will
bring your own pen.
Bring your own pen and boobs. How about that, George? You're married. For George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We'll see you back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Game week.